Growing up as a kid in the 1960s, I always wanted to be a play-by-play announcer. And the announcer I wanted to emulate was the late Ray Scott, whom I remember for his calls of NFL games on CBS in the late 60s and early 70s. In 1982, my late broadcast partner Larry Kotler and I interviewed Scott on WHO Radio's Saturday Sportsline program. At the time, he was preparing to call the games of the USFL's Arizona Wranglers. He also had some choice words regarding the late Howard Cosell. Here's the interview with Ray Scott.
Here at 10:40 on the WHO Saturday Sportsline.
WHO Saturday Sportsline, 2:19 in the afternoon. Ray Scott on the live line with us now. But before we get to Ray, we have these public service announcements to read. The West Des Moines snow ordinance is in effect. The fourth grade girls basketball game scheduled for this afternoon. All of those have been canceled here in the city. Northeast area YMCA youth basketball games in Ankeny canceled for today. And the girls basketball clinic at Hoover High School has been canceled for this afternoon. So those are some of the sports-oriented cancellations and postponements that we have on WHO Saturday Sportsline. Glad to welcome Ray Scott to the airwaves of WHO. Ray's talking with us live right now, and you can call us up and talk with him at 282-5111 here in the city. Our toll-free Watts line is 1-800-532-1111, and our long-distance line is area code 515-282-5120. Ray, some of your future plans include football very soon.
My God, it's hard to believe that the U.S. Football League will begin play on March the 6th, and I'll be involved as the radio broadcaster for the Arizona Wranglers, so I'm practicing saying Wranglers instead of Vikings.
Let's get back to basketball right now. We can talk about football at a later time, of course, but this is the basketball season, and you're doing a lot of the Big Eight televised games. What's your assessment of the Big Eight right now?
Much stronger than I thought it would be, from top to bottom. Some outstanding talent. I think that Oklahoma's Wayman Tisdale is as good a freshman as I've seen in a long while. I think young Hoppin of Nebraska is outstanding. Colorado has a fine freshman center by the name of Randy Downs. I have not seen Stepanovich and Sunvold and the Missouri team in person yet, but I will on Tuesday when they play at Iowa State. Mo Abbott, Nebraska, has a much improved team overall. Well, good enough to beat Oklahoma. I've seen Oklahoma State on 2 occasions now, and to say just top to bottom, it's much stronger. And Missouri would appear to be the class of the league, but I don't think Missouri can win, for example, at Oklahoma. I doubt that they can win at Oklahoma State, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them lose at Nebraska. So it's a well-balanced conference with an awful lot of talent.
We're visiting with veteran broadcaster Ray Scott on WHO Saturday Sports Line. Lines available to you locally for Des Moines and surrounding suburbs, 282-5111. Elsewhere around the state, the toll-free statewide Watts line, 800-532-1111. Outside the state, the area code 515, the number 282-5120. Those calls must be paid for in advance. Let's switch over to the phones right now and take a phone call for Ray Scott. Good afternoon. You're on Saturday Sports Line.
Yes, good afternoon, gentlemen. Ray, I know you do a lot of MC work for the University of Minnesota and the Williams fundraisers. In talking to Twin Cities sports writers and broadcasters, is the opinion that Joe Salem's head coaching position in jeopardy, and how is he being received by boosters and alumni groups?
The last part of it sort of faded away. I think your basic question was whether Joe Salem was in trouble. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
In my opinion, no, but with this qualification. I believe that this year Joe's team has to show considerable improvement, or conceivably pressure from whatever group, whether it's boosters, alumni, general public, or whatever. I think that might force Paul Giel to make a change, and I hope that doesn't happen. I happen to be a Joe Salem backer, booster. I think he's made some mistakes. I think he made some mistakes in some of the assistant coaches that he had, although I think that has been pretty much corrected. I knew Joe Salem when he was a substitute quarterback, back when he was backing up Sandy Stevens, back in the early 1960s when I was broadcasting Gopher football. I was impressed with him then as a very young man. I was impressed with him even more as he started his coaching career. I think he's a very bright coach, and I think that he has made the necessary changes. I think he'll be successful.
Okay, that brings to the second point. He he did fire Bruce Vandersall, his defensive coordinator, Olson, and Bill Happel, and then Charlie Baggett and Mike Wynn left to go to different schools. He hired Gerald Odell and Clarence Hudson from Iowa State. Has he hired any other assistants since that time?
I wish I could tell you that I've kept up to date on all developments. It's my understanding that with the possibility of just one position, I think he's hired everybody by now.
Uh-huh.
And to the best of my knowledge, his recruiting is going very well. And there's no doubt about it, he has to come in with some immediate help there, whether they are freshmen or junior college transfers. But I just happen to think that Joe Salem is an excellent football coach. But let's face it, more and more at major schools, the head coach doesn't coach so much as supervise. And it's absolutely essential that he has very strong assistants. Without mentioning any names, I just think he made some mistakes in some of his assistant coaches in the past.
Okay, I agree. I hope that Joe is able to hold on to his job. In regards to Big Ten football and getting around, who do you look for to be really strong next year in the Big Ten, other than Ohio State and Michigan?
Well,
I think Iowa will be strong, of course.
Iowa will be stronger. I expect Purdue to be stronger. I think as long as Mike White's at Illinois, they're going to be very competitive. Indiana will continue to struggle. Michigan State has made a change, so I don't know whether George Perlis can get things squared away in a hurry, although I think eventually he will. He's a very bright coach. Here again, it's like the Big Eight in basketball. It's a strong conference, and if some of these coaches and institutions would get over this inferiority complex where Michigan and Ohio State is concerned, then I think it would almost improve overnight. But at one time we had a coach at Minnesota, a good friend of mine, Cal Stahl. I like Cal very much, but Cal, when he's out recruiting, was being quoted in the paper consistently saying, I don't know how we can compete with Michigan and Ohio State. Well, I don't think with that kind of an attitude that you can recruit very successfully. And I think you start off with 2 strikes against you because you have a defeatist attitude right away. I don't think you have to have a defeatist attitude. I think you can recruit successfully at Minnesota, Michigan State, all the schools other than Michigan and Ohio State.
Okay, one final question, and I'll let you go. You mentioned Sandy Stevens back in 1959, 60, and 61 when Joe Salem was backup quarterback. And
right.
Murray Wormuth was the coach of the national championship team in 1960. What is he presently doing? I know he was with the Vikings for a while when he left Minnesota.
He's still doing some scouting for the Vikings. That's it.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I saw him just a few months ago, was in good health, and he's a wonderful person who handled adversity there for a while as well as any human being could ever handle it.
Back in 1958.
He was then and is now an outstanding person and an outstanding coach.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call this afternoon on Saturday Sportsline. We're visiting with veteran broadcaster Ray Scott. Ray, the Vikings made the playoffs this year, lost to the eventual Super Bowl champion, Washington Redskins. But how do you see the Vikings? Do you see them back on the way up?
Well, I've got to phrase this very carefully. I will never be elected the president of the Bud Grant fan club. I think that his basic approach to coaching, which is, among other things, that it's not the job of the coach or the coaches to get a team mentally ready to play, I don't agree with it. I think that it is the coach's job to get a team mentally ready to play. I don't think it's a coincidence that the 4 Viking teams that played in the Super Bowl were the 4 flattest teams I've ever seen play in that so-called super extravaganza, whatever you want to call it. Once you reach playoff contention in the National Football League, the abilities of the teams involved are almost equal. The difference eventually will lie, in addition to the obvious, the breaks, the fumbles, and so forth, but the difference will ultimately lie in which team is better prepared mentally to play. And if it's not the job of the coaches to do it, I don't know whose it is. I saw the Vikings play inspired football when they defeated the Dallas Cowboys on a Monday night. I saw them play inspired football when they defeated Atlanta. And I saw them fall right back into the same old pattern of a flat performance against the Redskins. Now, don't misunderstand me. Maybe they would not have won had they been higher emotionally or more ready to play, whatever you want to call it. I don't care whether a team I'm with or a team I'm interested in. I do not really care whether that team wins or loses. What I am interested in from a professional football team, and I emphasize professional, is that they are mentally ready, prepared to play as well as they can play. I don't think that Bud Grant teams play that well.
Okay, let's take another call for Ray Scott talking about the Packers here. Go ahead, you're on the air.
Yeah, I grew up in Wisconsin when Ray Scott was the kind of the unofficial voice of the Green Bay Packers, and I know everybody in Wisconsin thinks an awful lot of Ray Scott. And I was wondering if Mr. Scott still follows the Packers, and if he does, if he thinks that with the personnel they have, they can become a Super Bowl caliber ball club.
I think they're very, very close right now. I think they will probably, over the next year or two, they're going to have to come with a young quarterback. Lynn Dickey is a very courageous guy, but because of injuries and limitations physically, he just can't move around that well anymore. I think their other offensive weapons are outstanding. Their skilled positions are filled with outstanding people. Their wide receivers, their tight end, their running backs, and so forth. But you can't turn the ball over the way they did against Dallas and expect to win. Those are, you don't so much win as you lose football games when you reach the playoffs. I think they're close.
Do you think
in response to your question, do I follow them? I sure do. I still have many friends in Green Bay. I never lived there. I just was a commuter. But I made many friendships there. Bart Starr's a good friend of mine of long standing. Various officials of the organization. Tony Canadeo, my longtime colleague in the telecasts. Tony's still a member of the executive committee. Tom Miller is a top executive with the organization. He started out the same year I did with them in 1956. He was the publicity man. And I have many, many friends there. And I check every week. One of the first scores I look at, other than when I was with the Vikings, is I would find out how the Packers were doing. They will always be very important to me.
Do you think that Scott Campbell can be the quarterback of the future for Green Bay?
I asked that question, and last Saturday, a week ago today, I was in Los Angeles to be Master of Ceremonies at the NFL Alumni Dinner the night before the Super Bowl. And Tom Miller and Tony Canadeo and other people with the Packers were there, and I asked them about Rich Campbell. And there's a hesitancy because, if for no other reason, the coaching staff hasn't elected to use him that much. They don't know yet. I think that if the truth were known, there were some people there that wishes that Bart would use Campbell, for example, in preseason this coming year, and find out, is he the young heir apparent to the quarterback job? And if not, then for heaven's sakes, let's get busy and draft somebody who can be.
All right, sir. Thank
you
you much for the call on WHO Saturday Sports Line. 2:30 in the afternoon, we're visiting with veteran broadcaster Ray Scott. 282-5111, our local line. Toll-free line is 1-800-532-1111. Our long-distance line, area code 515-282-5120. And we'll be back with more Ray Scott on WHO Saturday Sports Line right after this.
Hi, I'm Bob Kelso. So you're thinking about opening a business in Iowa, but the red tape is pretty thick. Call One Cuts Red Tape. Fast information about how to start that business, how to get a sales tax permit, what laws apply to you, financing, training programs, expansions, or relocation. Call One Cuts the Red Tape. One phone number supplies all the information you need. 1-800-532-1216. Remember, call One at 1-800-532-1216. A public service of the Iowa Development Commission.
The Bell System presents Ronnie Millsap for Long Distance.
My love and I so far apart, but we're still talking heart to heart. The words are soft, the words come easy to touch a place deep down inside me. Reach out and touch someone. Bring that special somebody you've been missing a little closer. All it takes is a call, straight from your heart. We talk of dreams we're chasing after, and fill the miles with love and laughter. My love and I so far apart, but we're still talking sweetheart to heart. Reach out and touch someone. Reach out, call up and just say hi.
Here's money-saving news for homeowners. The Pink Panther's offering a Pink Power rebate. Right now, if you buy 10 rolls or more of pink fiberglass insulation to add to your home, you get a $10 rebate from Owens Corning. $10. See your participating Owens Corning supplier for details and your insulation requirements. But hurry, the $10 Pink Power insulation rebate ends February 20th.
Big pressures, big worries, big dinners, big hurries. Here's what your head and stomach need. Big relief. Not Rolaids, not Tums, not aspirin. Here's one that gives you big relief.
When you need big relief, you need Alka-Seltzer. It neutralizes the excess acid your stomach has churned out and speeds relief to your aches and pains. Read and follow label directions.
Alka-Seltzer gives you big relief.
America's home remedy.
We're talking with Ray Scott on WHO Saturday Sports Line. At the top of our little segment with Ray, we mentioned that Ray was going to be doing USFL football broadcasts of the Arizona Wranglers. And Ray, a lot of people are saying that this USFL is a little bit different from other Raider leagues, if we can say that, because the USFL is playing in a different time frame than the others did, and they seem to have a lot of good financial backing and a lot of smarts behind them, too.
They've done a lot of things right. For example, they are not, unless somebody like George Allen goes berserk, they're not trying to get into a bidding war for talent with the National Football League, and that's smart. Each team, I think, will basically try to sign one or two so-called blue-chip collegiate players. The second thing that they've done that I think is wise is that they have a gentleman's agreement that each club will spend so much amount of money per year. This way, assuming that the coaching is adequate, they will have parity. The games will be competitive. That is a very wise move. They had a geographical draft, which I think might have been the smartest of all. In other words, a team like the Arizona Wranglers have first call on the certain schools within their geographical area. Or in a few cases where there aren't enough schools around, they have assigned schools from outside that area to that particular team. For example, Arizona State, Arizona, Northern Arizona, New Mexico, and so forth. Players whose names are already known to the audience in this area will be on the squad. So they start off without an identification problem. That is another very wise move. When the league was formed, instead of doing as the World Football League did, which was pretty much put together by a promoter or promoters, they made each potential franchise holder come up with money. This merely went into the pocket of the promoters in most cases. This league said in this, we don't want money from you. What we do want is a performance bond to guarantee that you'll pay your bills and stay in business. That was a very wise move. They had credibility from the outset, as proven by the fact that ABC agreed to pay them approximately $21 million a year for 2 years before they ever signed a player. They are playing in every case in top-drawer stadiums, in most cases where NFL teams are playing. Like here, the Arizona Wranglers will be playing in Sun Devil Stadium, Arizona State Stadium, a top-class stadium. The Birmingham team will play at Legion Field, where Alabama plays some of its games. So that they have a lot of things going for them. And their ownership is very solid, financially and otherwise, so that I think their chance of success is extremely high.
We're visiting with veteran broadcaster Ray Scott on WHO Saturday Sports Line. Our numbers 282-5111 for Des Moines and surrounding suburbs. Elsewhere around the state, our toll-free Watts line 800-532-1111. Outside the state, 515-282-5120. That call must be prepaid. Ray, during the break we were talking about broadcasters on television, and I have kind of a double-barreled question to ask at you regarding that. First of all, why do you think they feel a need to talk so much and tell everybody things that they probably know anyway about football? And second of all, who do you like to listen to? Who do you enjoy listening to?
First off, maybe I'd better qualify everything I say by saying I have been undoubtedly the most vociferous critic of the network sports departments and their policies and some of their people than any other broadcaster. Now, in many ways, this has hurt me. There's no way that any of the three major networks will hire Ray Scott, and I accept that. That's fine. But by the same token, I flatly refuse when I'm asked by columnists and writers around the country, and in this case by someone like yourself, I flatly refuse to say to myself, well, now, let's see, how will this sound? Will this hurt somebody's feelings? I think in this case, I think I have some credibility in this business. I think that there are some young broadcasters that might pay attention to what I say, and so I'm totally honest about what I say, at least from my point of view. I think that one of the reasons that we have the caliber of sports broadcasters that we do on a national level is because most of the networks, most of the time, insist on a so-called showbiz approach. In other words, the Monday Night Football approach. I couldn't disagree more violently with that approach. We don't care whether what is said, in particular by the mouth of New York, as I call him, we don't particularly care whether what he says is right, good reporting, or anything else. All we want is for people to talk about him, writers to write about him, people to criticize him. Well, I just think that's ridiculous. I think it's been the worst thing that's ever happened to our business. Because unfortunately in this country, we equate success with how much money a man makes. And people read that this man makes $1 million as a network sportscaster. Now a young sportscaster comes along, new in the business, he says, gee, this must be the way to do things. Well, I just happen to believe that that's not the way to do things. It's the showbiz approach that I disagree with. Emphasis on the broadcaster in the booth rather than on the game. Now, who do I enjoy listening to? There are many. I'll name several. I think Dick Enberg does a good job. I don't think that Dick has been carried away by his own importance. I don't think that Dick feels he's being paid by the word. I don't think that Dick thinks that it's a disgrace to have a moment or so or a few seconds of silence and allow the viewer at home to drink in the event and talk amongst the friends that's with him watching. I don't think he thinks that that's wrong. In fact, there are many times when, if ever silence was golden, it's in the area of sports broadcasting. I think ABC has a fine young broadcaster in Al Michaels, or is it Michaels? I'm not sure which.
Al Michaels.
Okay.
With the S.
Al, to me, and I told him this personally, gave a perfect description of when not to say a word. When our 1980 Olympic hockey team won that fantastic gold medal, their last two games by defeating Russia and then I believe Finland. At the climactic point, when Jim Craig, the goalie, with a flag draped around him, was skating on the ice and looking into the stands and was mouthing the words, you could read his lips saying, "Where's my dad?" and the place was in pandemonium, Al didn't say a word. The picture told the whole story. Now that to me was a perfect example of how to be a sportscaster on television. If ever the phrase, the picture is worth 1,000 words, there it was. I'm going to make a contrast. There was I forget whether it was against the Dodgers that Reggie Jackson hit the 4 home runs in one game, or 3 home runs.
It was against the Dodgers in the 78 series, I believe.
Okay, was it 3 home runs?
Yes, it was 3.
All right. Now, when the 3rd home run was hit, it was at Yankee Stadium. And the place, of course, was in an uproar. They were in an uproar after the first one, more so after the second one. And when the 3rd one was hit, my goodness, the place was absolutely going wild. There had been a publicized run-in between Thurman Munson, the late Thurman Munson, and Reggie earlier in the year. And, of course, the differences between Reggie and then the manager, Billy Martin, were very well publicized. As Reggie was circling the bases, the picture told the whole story. But in contrast to the way Al Michaels handled the Olympic hockey telecast, all you could hear was practically a gargle out of one Howard Cosell, screaming at the top of his lungs, something to the effect, nobody could understand it, he was practically hysterical, and to the effect that here's this man that's so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so with Munson and so-and-so with Martin, and just unwilling to give up the stage to the event. Now that to me represented the worst in television sportscasting as compared with young Al Michaels and the best. And to me, those two pretty much wrap up how I feel about it.
Why do you think, Ray, that there's been this evolution toward a show-busy approach?
Oh, I was say, I think it all started, ABC Sports was very much the poor country bumpkin for a long time. The network was 3rd on the totem pole for years, and they wanted to attract attention. And so they did the sort of things to attract attention, to get the critics to writing about it. It made a difference whether they wrote was good or bad. It's just that they wrote about them. They were noticed. They desperately wanted and craved attention. And in that area, they've done very, very well. But what my constant statement is, but it's not journalism. it's not sports journalism. It sure as hell isn't good sports journalism. And as I understand it, or as I feel about it. So they've, as a network, have done well. They've done a lot of things right. And I got into I guess what's considered by some a memorable debate by way of a radio station on a sports talk show like this. So probably about 11 years ago, at a station in Boston. Rune Arledge was on the program. Carl Lindemann, then at NBC. Chet Simmons, then at NBC. Now the head of the commissioner of the U.S. Football League. Howard Cosell was on the broadcast. Kurt Gowdy was on. Chris Schenkel was on. And I was one against the world. Kurt was in no position to be critical of ABC because although he was with NBC at the time, he had his American Sportsman show on ABC. So he couldn't be critical. Chris was in the process of, frankly, of getting the shaft from ABC, but he was still on their payroll as now, and he wasn't in a very good position. Out of professional courtesy, Chet Simmons and Carl Lindemann with NBC, they didn't want to be critical of their counterparts over at ABC, so they were very careful in what they said. And I told Rune Arledge this. I said, look, Rune, you people have done a lot of fine things. Your Olympic coverage in the main, if you'd forgotten about Cosell, your Olympic coverage was outstanding. You've done a lot of great things in your wide world of sports, for example. But I said, don't tell me that Monday Night Football represents good sports journalism. He had made the statement, he said, and I was with CBS at the time, he says, we have more journalism in 5 minutes on Monday Night Football than you people at CBS have in an entire season. I said, hey, buddy, you're not talking to children. You're talking to somebody who's been in the business twice as long as you have been. And don't try to kid me and label it journalism. I said, label it for what it is, Rune. Showbiz. I said, the department at ABC Sports that deserves every award in the business is your publicity department. I said, your publicity department has made more out of less than anyone in the history of our business. And I admire Frank Gifford. How Frank has managed to keep his cool in the midst of what he himself calls a circus is beyond me. And I like Don Meredith very well, and up to a point, I enjoy a lot of his commentary. Cosell adds nothing. He's a deterrent. He's a nuisance. He's obnoxious. He's one of the few people in our business that I think deliberately set out to be obnoxious and has succeeded beyond his wildest dreams.
Ray, how would you upgrade sports journalism?
Well, I think number one, if I were doing the hiring, let's say at a network, before I hired the former player, I would audition him or her, and if I felt that they had something basically to offer, knowledge of the game, ability to articulate and so forth, then I would make sure that they had a period of apprenticeship. Would you believe I have done national telecasts with former players who did not know that when the red light went on that they were on camera?
Oh, yes.
Nobody ever told them. Would you believe that, as we all do when we do a telecast, we're listening to a director in one ear? And a director will say something to you. I've had people that, because, not their fault, because they weren't prepared for it, would answer the director on the air. What was that you said? Nobody even bothered to take him to New York for a day, 2 days, a week. One time, a very prominent former player, name is unimportant, came to me for advice. He had been approached by one of the major networks to be an analyst. And he said, in effect, what do you think I ought to do? And I said, well, among other things, assuming you're satisfied with money and conditions and so forth, and this is well in advance of the season, I said, ask them to send you the tape of a game. Take it to your local CBS station where you have a good relationship and play the tape and put on the sort of comments that you think you should make. Then send it to them in New York and ask them to do a critique. And is this what you expect? Is this what you want me to do? What do you want me to change? And so forth. Do you know the response he got? We don't have a tape available. The same broadcaster was then hired. His first assignment was with me. It was going to be his second game of a doubleheader, which meant there'd be a lot of people watching. The night before the game, he came to me and he said, Ray, I'd like to have breakfast with you tomorrow morning. I'd like to discuss my role in the telecast, what I should do, and so forth. And so, as a matter of courtesy, I went to the producer. And I mentioned that so-and-so wanted to have breakfast with me in the morning, what he wanted. Now, I said, I don't want to tell him anything contrary to what you have told him or anybody else at the network has told him. The producer said, we haven't told him anything. Now, do you get the idea of some of the things I would change?
And would you get these people prepared and no just send them out?
It's a sink or swim. For example, I want to remember Jimmy Brown as a great running back. I don't want to remember the Jimmy Brown that I heard on CBS television as an analyst? Why, for heaven's sakes, it was a disgrace. Fred Williamson, remember him?
The hammer.
defensive back with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Monday Night Football.
Monday Night Football. What did he do, last 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks? Any person with an ounce of intelligence that sat down and talked with Fred Williamson for 3 minutes would never hire him in that role. Never. But these people throw him to the wolves, wave some dollars in front of him, go on the air, you're an analyst. You threw a football, you caught a football, you tackled, you're an analyst. Well, to me, it's an insult to the business. It insults every professional that there is, that you can walk off the street and become a broadcaster. It just doesn't work that way.
Well, sure, and the football players wouldn't, and the athletes wouldn't like it any better if you or I walked out there and put on pads and, pretended to be football players.
I'll tell you what I told a car dealer friend of mine back some months ago. I said, hey, this is one of them that does his own commercials, I said, hey, you hear, by the way, what I'm going to do? He said, what's that? I said, I'm going to open a car dealership. He said, you don't know anything about the automobile business. I said, have you seen any of your commercials lately? And I feel exactly that way about our business. I can get pretty wound up on this subject.
Ray, I wish we had more time to devote to it. I've just been enthralled listening to you. And listen, you've got one young sportscaster who listens to you. I'm in your school. I might not go far, but I'm on your side.
Well, listen, before I forget, tell a couple of my good friends there at WHO, Jim Zabel and Bob Earl, I said hello, would you?
I've heard of them, yeah. We'll tell them you said hi.
I'd appreciate it.
We'll do. Ray, hopefully we can do this again some other time.
Okay.
But we'll check back with you. Good luck with the Arizona Wranglers. Thanks for joining us today. Really enjoyed it, and hang in there.
Okay, buddy.
Okay,
Get
Ray.
that weather cleared up by the time I get to Iowa State on Tuesday.
Well, we're up to about, 13 inches now, something like that?
Oh, boy, I'm coming in there Tuesday.
Well, we'll try to see you up at the ball game. I'm going to try to check on the Missouri-Iowa State game.
Gary Thompson and I'll be there.
Okay, well, thanks very much for joining us, Ray Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, that's Ray Scott, veteran broadcaster. What can you say? That was terrific. AP Sports Update is next, and we'll be back with more Saturday Sports Line after that.
Ray Scott's bare-bones TV play-by-play style was his hallmark. He called NFL and Major League Baseball games and called college games as well. He died in 1998 after suffering from a series of health problems. For Saturday Sports Line Memories, I'm Michael D. Lee.